Good morning. I am Steve Weber, and welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show on Tuesday, January 26th. Today's show number 114. All righty. So yeah, this day is going to be a fun show. I have an old friend, Dave Trombetta, coming up at about 15 past the hour. Dave and I were the front men for the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company for 15 years, doing the promotional stuff and the grand openings and traveling around the world. Had a great time. So Dave's going to join us. We're going to talk about those early days and some of the adventures that we had as we helped open up and roll out the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company across the world. So that'll come up, like I said, about 15 past the hour. And my monologue today has something to do with that. And it's the best piece of advice I got from Dave and from the folks at Bubba Gump Shrimp. And that piece of advice was to stay in character. Always stay in character. They kind of pounded that. I was maybe a little bit of a slow learner, and they did pound that into my head in the early days. So I'm going to talk about that. But first, let me tell you what's happening in the next couple of days. So tomorrow, Wes Schaefer is going to join us, and Wes is the sales whisperer, and Wes is a guy he's a sales guy. So he coaches people in selling, but he has a specific niche in that he, talks about the technology and the virtual technology. And Wes started using digital tools and virtual meetings way back before anybody knew that was even possible. So he's been doing this for about 13 or 14 years now. And he's going to join us and tell us about how that whole world of selling online and virtual has evolved and changed, and the types of things he does. And then we'll ask him what he thinks is happening in the next, in the next couple of years, certainly in this year coming up, after all the changes of last year. So that's tomorrow, Wes Schaefer. Thursday, Yolande Brenner will join us, and she is a singer, an actress, a writer, and she is the author of the memoir, Holy Candy, Why I Joined a Cult and Married a Stranger. And so she's several years out on the other side of that, joining a cult and marrying a stranger, but she's going to share her story. That's going to be a great conversation on Thursday morning. All righty, planning to do a live show on Friday. Don't have a scheduled guest at this moment, but that's okay. We'll figure that out as the next couple of days go along. All righty, so let me go ahead and just launch right into my monologue. And what I wanted to talk about this morning is when I joined Bubba Gump Shrimp back in 1996 as Forrest Gump, I got one main piece of advice. And I look back and I reflect on it. There was only one thing they ever really had to do to coach me. I mean, there was probably lots of little things that went on, but there was one major thing that they did. And that was basically say, hey, always stay in character, always stay in character. So when I showed up, I had the suit, I had the blue shirt, I had the chocolate box, the suitcase, the shoes. So they never had to tell me to, fix my uniform. That was never a conversation that we had. I was prepared that way. And as I was sitting there talking to people, I was good at interacting and engaging, with the people. So they never had to come up and say, hey, I want you to be more friendly or, be more Gump-like, try doing this. It was never, they just allowed me to do whatever I wanted that way. And I sure appreciated that. And that was part of why it was so much fun for me, is I really got to invent that whole, interacting with the people thing. So that part was all great. But there was one thing that they did say over and over in those early days, and that was always stay in character. And so what was the problem? What was the challenge that they needed to give me that advice? Certainly I looked like the character and I even acted like the character. But here's what I've identified and figured out. I didn't feel like the character. I felt like Steve, or probably more appropriately, I felt like Steve pretending to be Forrest Gump. So I felt like I was pretending to be the character. I didn't feel like that character in those early days. And they must have saw that and picked up on that and said, okay, just always stay in the character. And I remember our guest, Dave, he must have told me that dozens of times, like those first couple of weeks and months, it was like over and over and over again. All right. So now a special thing happened as a result of that coaching is that I started to feel like the character as I, be the character. And here's what happened. The more I felt like the character, the more I felt like the character, the better people started responding to me. And the better people responded to me, the more fun I started to have. And then the more fun I was having, the more I really believed it, that I was the character. And so what happened over, those first couple of months is I shifted from feeling like Steve pretending to be the character to being the character. And I guess any actor, they get trained on how to do that. I was not an actor per se. So I didn't have any formal training that way. And so that was really the training, and that was the coaching that I received. And eventually I became the character. And it was a fun thing. So let's just compare that to your own life. You go to a new job, you get hired, like your own life, your own career, your own job, you get hired for some kind of a new job. And on day one, you don't feel like the person that they hired you to be. You feel like the new person, or you feel like the person who used to work at the other place who's now suddenly in this new place and working. And so, initially you're like, you're just the new guy, the new person, and it's like you're acting, you're pretending. And then after a few weeks, you start to feel like that person. And then the more you feel like the person, the better that your employees start to respond to you. And the better the other, your coworkers and the other employees that where you're working respond to you, the more fun you start to have. And then the more fun you start to have with your new role, the more you believe that you are that person. And so I think that, I think in my own life, I've seen that happen in most of the jobs that I've gone to. And I guess maybe you have felt the same way. So back to the situation, when I was Gump, and I think maybe what was happening, I don't know this for sure, but, I would tell somebody, they'd be like, what's your name? What's your name? I mean, people were fascinated by, who am I? They wanted to know. And so, I might have said, oh, I'm Steve. And then that person goes and says, oh, he's Steve. And the next person. And what happened, it was like pulling the Wizard of Oz curtain back. That the all-powerful Oz suddenly became just this ordinary dude. And so that's why, in my particular case, had to stay in character. So the benefit of staying in character was that I got to commit fully to it. When I was like hesitating and thinking, I'm Steve pretending to be the character, I wasn't fully committed to it. But once I was committed to being the character, then that's when the magic started to happen. Others started to engage more fully. Others were having more fun, and I was having more fun. So that one single piece of advice that Dave Trombetta gave me to stay in character probably made a short-lived career turn into a long career. So got to do it for 15 years, and very grateful for that. Very grateful to the folks at Bubba Gump for that opportunity that I had. So that's it for the monologue. That didn't take nearly as long as I thought. So I'm going to go ahead and I see Dave is back there. I'm going to go ahead and fire this up and bring him on board. Let's see if he's enjoying the snacks back in the American Gumption green room. Dave Trombetta, are you there? Are you with us?
The box of chocolates was lovely. Thank you.
I was going to put crackers and cheese, but somehow like a box of chocolates just seemed a lot simpler.
What's funny is every time somebody puts a box of chocolates in front of me, I have to look at it and go, oh, I just can't. And then I have one anyway. So
we went through a lot of chocolates.
We did go through a lot of chocolates. Yeah.
All righty. Well, hey, Dave, welcome here. I wanted to, I got two things that I typically do when a guest comes on board. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and, just force you to go through the protocol. So the protocol is I read a little bio and let people know who the heck you are. And then I have a song that I play. And coincidentally, it's called The First Time Guest Welcoming Theme. So it only happens once. So if we bring you back next year, You'll never hear it again.
Okay.
Alrighty, so let me tell people who Dave is. Who is this character, Dave Trombetta? Now, Dave is a dedicated and an energetic manager with the ability to build lasting relationships. For the last decade, Dave has worked for Sodexo, a global conglomerate who supplies over 100 services, including food services, hospital management, and so forth, to over 100 million consumers daily in over 64 countries worldwide. That's a big company. That's a big company.
It is a big company, yes.
And it's Sodexo is the 19th largest employer in the world. I had no clue as to that. So you're one of those. You're one cog in the wheel.
I'm a very small cog in the wheel, but proud to be.
So before that, Dave and I worked for the Bubba Gump shrimp restaurant. Not only did Dave work for them, he was the general manager of the very first Bubba Gump restaurant way back in 1996 when it was a brand new fledgling startup. The brand was a lightning in the bottle story. It followed in the footsteps of the blockbuster movie Forrest Gump. The restaurant was an instant success. For the next 15 years, Dave worked in marketing and sales for Bubba Gump as they grew to 20 plus USA restaurants and 8 international locations. During that time, Dave and Forrest Gump were the front men for the brand, traveling to cities and countries far and wide. It was a magical time filled with hard work, lots of fun, and a fair amount of over-the-top zaniness. Is over-the-top zaniness a fair description?
You might be underreaching, but it's good. Yeah.
All righty. Well, very good. So anyway, that's who Dave is. Dave Trombetta, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Let's go ahead and play the first-time guest welcoming theme. The only time you'll ever hear this as far as you being a guest on the show, Dave Trombetta. Have you ever had a marching band welcome you to a show before, Dave Trombetta?
I have not. That was quite thrilling.
You're a music aficionado. That's probably not on your playlist. The Washington Post March. You may or may not.
It's going to be now, though. I'm going to.
All right. Hey, so let's, before we're going to jump into the Gump thing, and that's what we're going to talk about because that's our connection. But just take a minute or two and tell people what you're doing today, with Sodexo. It's this huge company. What is your role that you're, doing? And what, I know you've been doing it for about the last 10 years.
Yeah. So I am the senior marketing manager for the West out here in Sodexo. So I work in the universities division, and that's where we deploy quality of life for students on campus. So dining, housing, groundskeeping, facilities maintenance, that sort of stuff. I specifically work with universities food service in the marketing piece, which is in a nutshell, our role is to go out and grow satisfaction for people in that piece of the business, grow the sales in that piece of business, and make sure we're communicating with our client partners and all the folks that live on campus so they know what's going on. And at the end of the day, give them a better quality of life experience while they're at whatever campus they happen to be at.
Obviously, this last year has changed a bit with campuses going virtual and students not being there as much. Are you not serving as many meals these days?
we're serving still a lot of meals. A lot of them are to go. We pivoted really quick. So I think we've had a really good run of being able to adapt to the situation, and it's different on every campus. So it just happens to depend on what that campus wants to do and how they want to manage it. And we have some really big schools and some really small schools, and we've been able to really customize that response wherever we've needed to. In some cases, that's been all automated, the text ordering and being able to do it that way. In some cases, it's been converting the things to more of a store where they can purchase foods and bring them back, or pick up things to take home and eat up. And we're constantly innovating ways to do that. So I think while it's been a challenging time, the exciting news is I think we're on the precipice of a brand new way to do this. So I think a lot of good ultimately will come out of this difficulty.
As students return to their a more typical college experience, the way that you serve them probably will be forever changed, and so there'll be a lot of things that happen that you had to do this year that will carry over and be part of the future.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it'll be we always try to set it up where it's geared towards what's going to make someone satisfied and happy and see value in their service. So I think it just drives more chances to adapt to the new world. So the really cool thing about it versus a restaurant, right, is that the target moves a lot more in that environment. So you're constantly working on ways to bring more value to the program, bring more excitement to the program, and bring more engagement, right? And bring people into that circle versus just being another part of what they do when they go to college. So awesome. It's been a challenging time, but a very exciting. I don't mean it's been exciting in a positive way, but it's been exciting in a way that it's been a lot to do, and there's still a lot to do.
Awesome. Well, good. So let's pivot and let's talk about what we invited you here to talk about, and that was the opening of the Bubba Gump restaurant back in 1996. That's when you and I met. It was like just a few days before the restaurant opened. But before that even happened, I mean, how did you get involved with the operators of the restaurant? You were, you're about 30 years old at the time, or maybe a little bit younger. And, I guess you're working in some other kind of a restaurant, and they recruit you and say, hey, we got this new idea and concept. Come join us. I mean, how did that all happen? How did you get involved with those folks?
Yeah, talk about a pivot. So I was down in Los Angeles. I was living there, and I worked for a company called Hamburger Hamlet. And this is going to be a theme, right? Through just sheer dumb luck, somebody from Rusty Pelican came into the restaurant I ran, liked what they saw, called me, asked me if I'd meet them and talk to them. So I went over to the Glendale Rusty Pelican for an interview. It was the day of the OJ truck chase. So I had to get across the 5 that day to go to this thing. I'm like, what's going on? Why are these people here? And, so that happened, and I got recruited into that company, went to San Diego with them, with Rusty Pelican, then went up to Monterey to, the building where the first Bubba Gump ended up being. The idea was we were going to convert that into a casual steak and seafood with a fish market out in front. And again, through just kind of some sheer dumb luck, a connection got made, and it was the time of, you had Planet Hollywood taking off and Hard Rock taking off, and then the All-Star Cafe and the Fashion Cafe, and I mean, you name it, there was a cafe for it. And the folks in licensing, you have to remember that about this time, Paramount went from being Paramount to being part of Viacom. Mm-hmm. So there was that change too. So Viacom's priorities, I'm guessing, were really focused on how do we license product, right? Like the other big companies do. So Forrest Gump was kind of on a list of things. And so I think there'd probably been chocolates out there and shrimp out there and cookbooks and an interactive CD-ROM and some other stuff, if you remember those things. And, through just a random connection, someone got asked if we could do a restaurant based on this, and the leadership at Rusty kind of threw the dice, and we put it together, and that they liked what they saw.
So what's interesting about that, I didn't realize that you had actually joined them thinking you were going to be running some other kind of a brand, some kind of a fish market restaurant, and then all of a sudden it turned into the Bubba Gump restaurant, and now you're sent up to Monterey to do this. What was it like as you were planning to open it? You guys were obviously kind of just flying by the seat of your pants, making it up as you went along, and you are being tasked with being the opening day general manager. So what was those couple of months as it led up to it like for you?
I had a few cocktails. It was exciting. It was really different. I mean, we didn't, we went there with the intent of taking the core of what was at Rusty Pelican, which was, great fresh seafood, cut in-house and some great cooking and a menu we could really execute well. And taking that, and I don't know if you remember Rusty Pelican, it was really a kind of a premier suburban upscale casual dining, with a really nice bar, and I think that was kind of on the way out anyway, as a thing. So the idea with this Monterey location was to have something very casual, and when the Bubba Gump thing came along, really what we were already working on just kind of got turned into that. So I think we were on the same page. The big difference was that merchandise store in the front was going to be a fresh fish market. So, the idea was this would be the reinvention of what we were doing in terms of, fresh seafood, but stripped down and casualized, and trying to build something that could be replicated and become like a new suburban favorite. And we had never been in a tourism market either. That was, although we were in tourism adjacent places like Pacific Beach and, definitely Harbor Island, San Diego, those kinds of areas, we weren't in something like Monterey, which was, we had a lot to learn. I'll put it that way about how to operate in those environments. So there was a lot of, not hemming and hawing, but there was a lot of moving forward and a lot of trying to figure out the training. And then a lot of really cool discussions about what this was going to mean, right, in terms of, what was going to happen. And one of the great things that happened out of that is something that I still carry with me today, was we talked a lot about how we were going to do things versus what we were going to do. And that became, in terms of how we were going to set up the front of the house teams to win at service, right? And how we were going to set the back of the house team up in terms of behavior and how they're going to interact with the front of the house. And so things really, without overtly saying it, became about, we started to figure out that, we've got fish on a grill, on a plate, and we've got a bar and drinks, right? And a view of the ocean. Well, so do the 17 other restaurants up and down the street. So there's nothing particularly unique about that, right? But, if we did this nicer than anybody else and we were more fun, and, then we tried to weave in the idea of Forrest Gump, that I think is what we were most worried about getting right out of the gate.
So I will interject myself at this point. And my story begins about 12 years earlier, when one day someone says, "Hey, you look like the guy from Bosom Buddies." And I'm like, "Oh, great. Who is it?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. It's the guy from Bosom Buddies." And so nobody even knew what his name was, but suddenly I became the guy who looked like that. The next 10 years, I heard over and over again, "Hey, has anyone ever said you look like Tom Hanks?" And that became a theme in my particular life. And so then Forrest Gump came out in July of 1994, and for Halloween that year I put the costume together and I was Forrest Gump, and I thought, okay, great, I got that out of my system. I put I hung the suit up in the closet and put the suitcase away, and lo and behold, in early March of 1996, I'm minding my own business, driving around in my car on a sales call, and I hear on the radio an announcement, or it's like a news story that says he's back, and I hear Bubba doing the fried shrimp and barbecue shrimp, and then Tom Hanks is talking as the Forrest Gump character, and they're going to open a Bubba Gump restaurant in Monterey, and they're going to open 17 restaurants over the next couple of years, and this whole hype, and I'm like, like I have like kind of this one of these moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to call these people, because over that 10 years when people were telling me I look like Tom Hanks, they would always end up saying, have you ever thought of making any money off of it? And so one of my standard answers was when people said, hey, do you know who you look like? I said, yeah, Tom Hanks, and I'm going to make some money off of it. Not so much because I really thought that was going to happen. It was just a way to kind of like end a conversation or fast forward a conversation that I had had hundreds of times and was, frankly, getting bored of. So this is the backdrop of who I am when I hear this story. So now I hear it, and then I go into a sales call like immediately after I hear it, and I pick up the Wall Street Journal because I'm waiting. It's just like laying there on the, and I open it up to the B section, the marketplace, and I just open it up, and there on like B17, like which I just opened up to, is the story about Rusty Pelican and Viacom opening up this concept of Bubba Gump. And I had only heard it like 10 minutes earlier, and now I'm seeing the article. So I very slyly tear the news article out of the Wall Street Journal, close it up, fold it up neatly, put it back on there, check out to make sure the receptionist, isn't calling security because I'm stealing, a piece of their newspaper. And I go home and I go, Rusty Pelican, who are these people? And I end up calling up and introducing myself. And the next thing you know, I get a phone call from a guy who's going to be the general manager. His name is Dave Trombetta. And we have a brief conversation. Do you remember that conversation, Dave Trombetta?
I do. And so you enter the story, you're kind of coming into the funnel, right? We're getting down to the wire, and a lot of things are happening, right? So we've conceptualized, we're trying to figure out, how to hire enough people in this little town that, 32,000, which is a challenge, right? Monterey gets something north of 8 million tourists a year, and there's only 30,000 people that live there theoretically based on census data. So it's probably more like, 20. And so there's that. And then there's, you got to remember, they really rolled the dice. Like all of our money was in to the license on this, and trying to finish this restaurant and get it right with not knowing what right is. And I mean, people are coming out of the woodwork at this point with, oh yeah, no, I really am Forrest Gump, or I knew the guy that, fried the first green tomato. I want to sell pictures of his cafe at your store. And we want, and then you called her like, I look like Forrest Gump. I'm like, that's great. Come on down. We'll see you tomorrow. And so you came down. We were like, what? It was really stunning. So at that point, the decision was, yeah, let's get Steve involved here. There's got to be a way. And I think it was a couple of days later that we had the opening, right?
Yeah, I think it was like only about the day I came down was a black and blue day.
That's right, yeah.
And I learned I didn't know what black and blue meant, but it was a black and blue day. So it was a perfect timing for me to show up because, the place was packed. It was filled with everybody, and there were Paramount people there decorating the building. And so there was all this stuff going on. And I remember I walked through and I just start going from table to table, interacting with people. And finally, like after I go to all the tables, I'm like, well, where's the guy I'm supposed to meet? What's going on here? I'm acting like I'm working and I haven't even talked to anybody yet. And anyway, so it was a great thing. The short story of it is that yes, Bubba Gump hired me. I became part of it. I was there for the grand opening, and it was a lot of fun. But from an operations point of view, you are the general manager, and I think, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think you immediately started doing 3 or 4 times what you had, the volume that you had been projected. And so you had to not only learn how to start a new concept, but you had to kind of throw out the playbook that you had up until that point and, make it all work.
Yeah. So the trick to that was, so we had a number in mind of what we thought we'd do in terms of number of guests based on the number of tables we had, based on some of our busier locations, right? And that translated into a financial number that we thought we could do we'd have a home run. And we figured there was plenty of foot traffic to get that from, but you just don't know, right? So we quietly got the restaurant open on a Saturday night, like officially open. I think we had the black and blue For those of you who don't know, black and blue is you take your servers and your employees, you put them in two teams, a black team and a blue team. Black team serves the blue team, break, blue team serves the black team. It's a way to practice. And then you invite some guests in. So then we got through the black and blues. I think we had a day off to finish stuff up. And then we were trying to open Saturday. And I think it was finally like Saturday at 3 or 4 o'clock, we were able to get the doors open for the first time. And, we just sort of did it, see what would happen. I think 150 or so dinners, which, not bad, right, for a restaurant. With that point, 206 seats, I think. So for no one knowing us, that was okay. We all went home, got some sleep, came back on Sunday and did 1,700 meals. It was like, where did these people come from? So we really, you have to put it in the, so two things kind of happened, right? One, it was, this is our best mathematical guess of what we think we'll see in terms of volume. The other was the one thing we didn't know, because we got a lot of press. Some of it wasn't real kind, right? And was like, what, a restaurant about a stupid guy? How's that gonna, I'm sure the service will be great. And it was that whole, if you think about product life cycles, right? That whole like surge of different branded cafes, that was already on the way out by the time we got up. I mean, it was worse than the Bernie memes in terms of speed. It was over fast. So, we didn't know what people were going to think this was just ridiculous, or they were going to love it. And it turns out they loved it. So, and there was a lot of curiosity. And so the game, in terms of changing the game, so one thing became, first step was, all right, we got to ramp up because our estimates are, clearly off. And, luckily, this was a pretty intelligent team that put that whole thing together. So we ramped up, we were able to get production ramped up, able to get vendors ramped up, able to kind of reconfigure what we were going to do to be able to handle the volume that was coming at us. And then, I think that curve took a few weeks, probably 5 or 6 weeks to figure out. And then we were able to transition relatively quickly from keeping up to how fast can we go to get people through. We had, 2-3 hour waits to get in the restaurant. I had never in my career at that point seen that kind of demand. But you think about the aquarium and the number of people there and the number of people that are just out walking around, and that market just kept growing as time went on in Monterey, with Silicon Valley growing, because that's the, I'm tired, it's the end of the week, I want to do something. I get in the car, in 75 minutes I'm on the coast. So yeah.
And not only that, the Central Valley, there's another, couple million people coming over, just getting away from, the heat of there, coming over to the ocean. So there were people from all over California that came to Monterey on a regular basis and enjoyed it. And of course, I was sitting out front, just interacting with people, and you were in there, like, working your butt off, trying to bring these people through. It got to the point where you were doing, you said 150 meals that very first day that you did a quiet opening. I mean, it got to be like well over 1,000 meals that you were doing a day. Is that correct?
Oh, we were in 2,000 plus territory pretty quick.
2,000, yeah.
I mean, so they were, that first couple of summers we'd have to open it. We tried different things like breakfast to see if we could capture on that, but that just wasn't a fit for that market. So we would start doing things like opening at 10:30, because we didn't take reservations. There was just no way to manage that process. And, you've got 10,000 people staring you in the face that all want to eat there that day. You can't really hold space. So that went out the door pretty quick. And then it just became this system of how fast can we move. So, and then that became, how efficiently. And so there was a lot of mechanics behind, how that all worked in terms of moving people through. And that was a really fine line to walk too, because you can't forget you're in the hospitality business, right?
Right.
So people want to have a great experience. They want it now. You've got a lot of people to give it to, so it's got to go quickly, but they can't know. It can't be obvious. So there were little things that we didn't do seasonally. So if you went there the first summer, no one ever offered you dessert. No one ever tried to get you to have a coffee after your meal. No one, if they sold you appetizers, it was something fast. And
Right.
there were just lots of restaurant things built in to happen to kind of keep that table going so we can get
Right.
to the next group that's trying to get in.
There was a as I and then we ended up working together for another 10, 12 years,
Oh,
traveling around doing all the other openings. But that original core team of people that you had and that you really trained and built, there was a special bond that existed, and it was like a fun factor. But the servers and the bartenders and even the back of the house people, there was a special kind of energy and love that stayed together for a long time. And as the company grew, and it kind of happened and replicated itself, again with the opening teams at the different locations, but it wasn't ever quite the same. And maybe that's only because our perspective. But
right.
I remember, you were like, a good 10 years older. I mean, most of the kids working there were like 18, 19, 20, 22. So you're about 10 years older than them. But, tell us about like interjecting the fun factor and keeping the energy high so that the customers were experiencing that fun factor.
So, yeah, that's the thing, right? I can teach anybody to carry a plate, right? I can teach anybody how to put liquid in a cup. I can teach you how to run the dishwasher. I cannot teach you how to be nice. You're either born with it or you're not. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter where you came from. But if you're not going to be engaging and nice to other people and want to serve because it's, you understand that you're doing this and that's the way it works, you'll never make it, right? So you can't come in there with a chip on your shoulder. So hiring was really hard because there weren't enough people there, right? And B, there weren't enough people there were a lot of people that were very qualified, but, wouldn't quite fit the dynamic of it. So from an idea standpoint, I'll go back to that idea. It's how versus what, right? We're serving food. Anybody can teach that. It's this how. And so keeping it fun was a key ingredient in a couple reasons. One, made the experience great for guests, right? Because it's going to be crowded and loud and noisy in there with a lot of people and a lot of families and a lot of kids. And so they're expecting some kind of dining-tainment, right, at that point. And we weren't doing anything schmaltzy or weird, like you would see at some other places of the time. And two, it had to be fun to work there or they wouldn't bring their friends. And so that's sort of the thing, right? The hiring process was more about, there's skills we can teach and there's built-in things we can't teach. So we're looking for that attitude, right? That great attitude. And then they get there, right? And if the managers, and I don't know if this is for anybody who's ever worked in a restaurant, the normal MO or the normal parody of a restaurant manager is, a guy with the keys on his belt loop, right? And like, you're 2 minutes late. We can't have that. And we run a tight ship here and yeah, right? And, you're trying to get people down to work on a waterfront in a place with no parking, and they're going to school and they got to park 6 blocks away and run down the hill and be in uniform when they come in. You can't scream at them about being 10 seconds late, right? You got to work with them. You got to meet them where they are at that point in their life. And if you can do that, I think then they will respond when you say things like you're going to put this much ice and this much, apple juice and this much orange juice in the shaker before you blend it with the yogurt. They're going to listen and want to do it right because they're getting what they need from you in terms of I don't want to say emotional support to work, but they know they're not walking into an environment where they're going to be micromanaged in that sense. So people, and I still manage people today. Now it's a little different. I manage other managers, and I try to develop and grow people in other roles that have to do with marketing, but I never get into, I don't checklist stuff with people. It drives them nuts. I try to get them oriented, get them in the place they ought to be, and then turn them loose and then guide them as need be.
So after those first couple of yees, and you and I, we kind of just ignored each other because I did what I was doing and you were busy. You were busy doing what you were doing. But then by a twist of fate, we would become connected. And I've got a picture that I'm going to share because we opened up the Bubba Gump restaurant in Hawaii. And I remember they didn't have any plan for media per se. And I end up, having a couple days off where I was in Maui. And then I said, well, is it okay if I go over to Oahu and have, just kind of check out the island? And they're like, oh yeah, we don't need you for like 3 days. And so I get over there, and like about 12 hours later, I get a phone call from you and said, hey, we're coming over. We're going to go on TV. We're going to do different things. And so anyway, I got these pictures of this is really the beginning of like where you and I realized that, oh my gosh, we can take Gump and put him in situations that are, kind of funny, kind of crazy, kind of zany, and it gets publicity. And just talk about like how that part of the whole story unraveled.
Yeah, I don't think we expected positive media attention. I'll put it that way. I went through a lot of media training early on because of the amount of questions we were getting. And it was really kind of defensive training, if it was anything. So I think we were getting ready to defend ourselves. And when we got so we had opened Monterey, we opened San Francisco. I remember you and I got to go on TV and do some stuff there. And then we got to Hawaii, and the floodgates just kind of opened for media, because once we got on one outlet, everybody wanted a piece of it.
Right.
And so this is another place where dumb luck plays into it too. So my college, right back is theater arts, right? So I'm a failed actor at that, not failed, but I just didn't go down that path and decided I wanted to do something very practical. Went to culinary school and got a degree from there. And then really only cooked once and found my thing that I liked doing was running restaurants. And that's how I ended up here. And by the time we get to that Hawaii opening, it's like, we need somebody who can work with the media and talk on TV, but they have to be able to cook and work with Forrest, so this whole thing will look polished. Can you do it? And I'm like, yeah. So everything kind of came into this weird phrase. So we would go to these towns, and then you showed the Hawaii picture. Every town we would try to get the picture or do the thing that was for the town. So we had a lot of fun trying to come up with what that was like. And we had a couple of good ones. Yeah, there we are in New York with Shrimp Louie. Right. Shrimp Louie, who's now been on Saturday Night Live. You and I haven't been on it, but he made it on there a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, we would.
Let me just show a few pictures here. This was on the I think the Fox and Friends.
Fox and Friends, yeah.
In New York, and then when we were in Minnesota, I remember you called me up and you said, "Hey, can you take one of your old suits and dye it pink? We're going to a breast cancer awareness party," and so that's what that was all about. Here's Manila. And the thing I loved about this picture is that Gump was able to get away with an awful lot. And like, I remember like looking at the police officers and saying, hey, give the peace sign. And these guys just would do it. I mean, there was no, they were having more fun hanging out with Gump than they were, acting like they were law and order. So, I mean, I just remember there was a lot of kind of over the top things, and you were more of the straight man, and I was kind of the guy doing crazy stuff, and yet you had your fair share of craziness with it. So it was a lot of fun. We were a good team.
Yeah, there's no question. That was the time of my life. We had a fantastic time going around the world. That Manila story is hilarious. I think they were trying to protect the Pope or something, and they stopped all this to come in because he was talking at whatever big we were in. Yeah, we were in Manila proper. Weren't we out by Subic Bay at that point?
I don't know. We were somewhere. We were just out traveling around doing
like we had a bodyguard, and they're like, here's the guys that are working with the Pope. So they just dropped the Pope. They want to get their picture with Forrest Gump.
Yeah. Yeah. And then here's a picture of radio. I mean, And I thought that like the first couple times that I did radio, I thought this is not going to work because so much of what I was used to was getting like a visual reaction. And yet we went on, and the energy that the DJ would have from them reacting translated into, across the airwaves. So it really was a very special, magical time.
Absolutely.
And now here is your son. Young Albert, and do you remember what this was all about?
Weren't we at a Ren Fair? Oh, was that the AIDS Walk in San Francisco?
Beta Breakers, I think.
Beta Breakers, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of good stuff, and there was Charleston jumping off the shrimp boat.
Yep.
And again, these were
man.
all pictures that you took. You were there, and so a lot of these pictures, you were the guy behind it, and I would like hand you my camera, or you had your own digital camera and send me the pictures. But I remember this was like a mattress thing, and I said to the guy, hey, wouldn't it be funny if Forrest Gump and the guy who was donating all these mattresses, we laid down on the mattress together? And he's like, oh yeah, sure, let's do that. So we could get away with a lot.
That is all. Yeah, I remember that guy. They would donate mattresses to families that didn't have them or needed them. And
yeah, exactly. So what happened was Bubba Gump adopted the philosophy of each city we would go to, they would hire a PR company, and they would tell the PR company, hey, we got Forrest Gump, and the PR company go, oh, this will be great, we can get you on. And every time, I mean, not every time, but most of the time, we would end up on 3 or 4 different morning TV shows and 6 or 7 radio stations, and so that whole week of the grand opening, you and I are running around just kind of having fun and causing mayhem.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, that was all it seems like it wasn't that long ago, but it's pre-social media for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Because that really wasn't a thing yet. And then, that would be our thing. So we would do something, we would get Forrest out in front of the public, right? Try to get you on TV, talk about the charity we'd pick locally for the opening. So it would always change. That would give us sort of the angle. And then a lot of it was just, let's get a car, let's get a video camera, let's go out and let's see if we can get noticed.
Yeah. And
so we would end up in a lot of high-profile places. I think I remember almost getting shot at Stallone's house in Miami for trying to look over the fence. We were doing the thing with Channel 10 there. But then the other thing we would do, too, is we would have a big meeting for all the employees, and we'd try to come up with something for Forrest to do that was super local. So we had a couple really cool ones. I remember Daytona. We got someone to bring a Camaro that was really kind of like jacked up like a race car. So there would be this whole thing where we get all the employees together, and then, we would have one of the trainers come out and get them all riled up. And then I come out and kind of joke with the crowd a little bit. Then I sort of host an MC, and then all the different leaders would come in and talk. And at the end, we'd bring out, they hadn't really met you yet. And you would come out and be like, oh, wow, Forrest Gump's here. So like, for instance, in Daytona, we did it where they were all kind of down on the beach, and we were up on this big cement sort of like, driveway we had it blocked off, and there was a car there. So you finish your speech and you open up your suitcase and you bust out the Dale jacket, and we crank up that song, I Can't Drive 55, and then you get in the Camaro and just peel out. And everyone's like, yeah, Forrest. Or when we did Miami, when you ripped off, you had the breakaway shirt. We started the Miami Vice theme. You put on the sunglasses and you pull that off, and you got the pink T-shirt on.
Yeah, it was, and that was the part where I went, oh my gosh, this is fun, and I loved sitting on the bench interacting with people one on one, but that was the chance to do it up on a stage and to have kind of a spotlight, and then of course that. My career ended up becoming, a speaker after that, and developed the motivational message. But it was really that foundation of doing those employee meetings that kind of gave me a taste of that, and went, wow, this is fun. And so anyway, it was a great time. It was a lot of fun. We got to travel the world. We were, Hong Kong, Japan, the Philippines, Mexico. All throughout the country, 28 different or 22 different U.S. locations over the 15 years. So it really was a fun time, and I'm grateful that the folks who were the operators, of course, that was you at the beginning. You were they were good. They were good people. They knew how to run a restaurant, and what I loved about the story is that it started out like hoping to do a couple hundred meals a day, and ended up doing 2,000 per day. So the amount of energy and the volume was just kind of it was just a magical time.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't see that. Well, a couple of things. There was some leadership at Bubba Gump's that was just phenomenal, and a couple mentors that I still talk to today that that experience left an indelible mark on me and grew me in a way that I didn't know I was being grown, and gave me some opportunity that I have now. But the other piece of it is that, I've never seen another restaurant company deal with it the way we dealt with it in terms of the volume and the efficiency and the dedication to getting it right. I'm very proud of where I am now, and I think we do a very good job doing what we do, which is radically different. It's not a purely consumer environment the way a restaurant is. And I've seen, there's one of the leaders used to always say, the road is literally littered with the people that can't do X, Y, and Z. And man, when you look back, I mean, I know things are different now because of everything going on, but prior to, this time last year, there were lots of people that came to be the next big thing that don't even exist anymore. And the Bubba Gump thing is still going, albeit with a new owner and company and whole other set of people and rules. But I think there's enough in there that has lasted this long.
Yeah, and you were the opening day general manager. You were there at that very beginning, and then as it became kind of a marketing phenomena and a rollout, you were there playing that role. So it was a lot of fun, and I felt like you and I were partners in the business in terms of like the piece that we contributed to it, and we had a lot of fun, and we were a good team and worked well together, and I'm very grateful for the fact that you allowed me to do the role I did, and it just fed, we fed off of each other.
Yeah, no, and I couldn't agree more. I'm very grateful I experienced. I'm very grateful that I got to meet you and have the fun that you and I had. That we had some great times, and you were a very positive influence on me. So, thank you.
I wasn't always a positive influence. We managed to get ourselves in a little bit of crossing the line, or at least going right up to the edge of the line.
You were rogue a few times, but the thing was though. I mean, for us to work together and accomplish what we had to do, we had to be honest, and we had to have. I always thought we had really good communication, right? When I think of a business partner today, like when we work with our client, like in my role now, what I do, working with other marketing people or working with people that are in my peer sort of sphere with projects, I learned a lot about how to communicate with somebody by working with you, just because I don't think we ever pulled our punches with each other.
Right.
And I never had a business relationship like that. I'd always been, yes, sir, no, sir, I'm going to do it. And I prided myself on being a good soldier. I grew a lot as a result of the opportunity to work with you.
Yeah, well, I think it was because we were, I respected, you were coming from the operation side of it, and I knew that I didn't know anything about that. And so I thought, oh, this is cool. This guy knows what he's doing that way. And of course, I was on the, the other side of, just kind of on the pure entertainment, or maybe on the marketing side more. And so anyway, we just had a nice fit. So anyway, great time together. You look back at your life and there are certain things that you do that kind of stick out that whole time, and that whole experience is one of those things. And, anyway, it was fun. I'm really glad that we connected a few weeks ago and said, hey, let's get together and do this. And we'll talk about the olden days. I think I got all the pictures. Let's just put them up there, and I'll go through some of them, one more time. Let's see, here we go. I'll start at the back. Here was a Santa. This was a picture. I remember, you wanted a promo, some kind of thing like, I don't know, like corporate Christmas parties at Bubba.
Right.
And so we took that picture. Here's this on the bench. This was a crazy one. What did the hotel room smell like after I got out of jumping in the Charleston River?
The Charleston River.
Exactly.
Love you, Charleston, but doesn't smell great.
Yeah, and then there's your from the Beta Breakers, your son Albert, who is now in his 20s and a grown-up young man, but he was hanging out with us in those early days, making the trips across San Francisco, one of the many radio stations. This one here I didn't show you. This was when we were we wandered into Conan's in New York, and we're like well, what had happened was we went to be on the Sunday morning show at the CBS studio or somewhere, whatever network it was. And so Saddam Hussein got found that morning. So our segment got bumped. So you and I just start like wandering around the TV studio, finding things. We see Conan's picture and we, took that picture. That was kind of fun. So,
yeah, I've actually got a picture at his desk.
Yeah.
So that was weird. That was a crazy morning.
Anyway, that's there. A cooking segment. How many cooking segments do you think we did?
Oh, we probably did 100 over the years.
And the people would love us. And I remember going to the set, and the host would always say, "Oh, what are you going to do?" And we're like, "Oh, we're going to cook this, or we're going to be okay, great." And then they said, "Okay, Forrest, we should do this or that." And I remember I had the ability to kind of just start a conversation and say, well, maybe we should try this. And they're like, oh, that's great. And so we would show up and basically take over the set for them and just do the show the way we wanted. Then we were, of course, respectful of what their needs were, but we also had the opportunity to get our message in there loud and clear, and it was a lot of fun. So
the big score would always be when you got them to let you do the weather.
Yes, I'd always say, "Oh, I can go do the weather," or I'd sneak into the weather picture with the green screen while the weatherman's doing the weather. And
we did that before Borat, just so you know. We pioneered that.
All righty. Well, Dave, this has been lots of fun. A trip down memory lane. I sure appreciate your getting up early to come join us this morning. Thank you so much. This is fun, and thanks for all the time we spent together. Yeah, we had a good work. We were a good team, good working relationship, and I can look back on it and feel like it was a job well done. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Steve. Great to reconnect with you.
All right, Dave. Well, take care. We'll see you again.
All right. Best luck to you.
Wow. So that was fun. That was Dave Trombetta, the opening day general manager of the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, telling us about, what it was like to build that restaurant brand from basically nothing, from just an idea to what it became, well, not hundreds, but 20 or 30. We were 22 when we were still with them, and now I think it's up to around 30 different locations. So they kept on opening. So that's it. A great show. I thank Dave for joining us. Tomorrow, I'm going to come back and Wes Schaefer, the sales whisperer, virtual selling and tech tools to live in a virtual environment. And then on Thursday, Yolande Brenner, the author of Holy Candy, Why I Joined a Cult and Married a Stranger. All righty. That's it, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Dave Trombetta, for joining us. We'll see you all tomorrow here on the American Gumption Morning Show.